Apologies as we missed Nationals Catcher Day on the calendar, but that's not going to stop us from going behind the dish here on Battery Power. I'm Cory McCartney, along with Grant McAuley, and the focus on Travis d'Arnaud as we continue our Stock Watch series. And Grant, after a career year in the shortened 2020 season, d'Arnaud's 2021 was defined by injury and struggle.
Yeah, it was, and I think that injury was something that affected not only his season, but also the trajectory of the Braves as they went through the dog days of summer. I know a lot has been said about who is behind the plate, who is helping work with the pitching staff throughout a season, and I think we saw the effects of that play out over the course of 2021. Yeah, the Braves got off to a slow start. Not a lot of things were clicking that they wanted to early. Yeah, they kind of stayed in the lonely position of neutral throughout the middle of the season as well, but they were really searching for identity, not just on the mound, but behind the plate, and I think those two, it does go hand in hand. We call this show Battery Power, and the real reason behind that is not just, hey, where does the team play its games? It's how crucial is the relationship between the battery that we see each and every day, the starters and the catchers. I think we got a little glimpse into that in 2021 as the Braves were struggling to just find some consistency and stability with who's putting the signs down behind home plate.
All right, so let's start off here with d'Arnaud behind the plate, a 78 weighted run created plus during the regular season. d'Arnaud hit 220 with a 671 OPS, 7 home runs, 14 doubles across 60 games. He missed 67 with that thumb injury that he sustained in May. He didn't fare much better, though, after his return. Hit 221 with a 720 OPS and had a 298 weighted on base average in the postseason. Regardless of it all, 144 weighted run created plus during that Silver Slugger 2020. The Braves announced in August that they were keeping him with a 2-year, $16 million extension. The reasoning was clear. You mentioned it. I mean, the Braves employed 7 different catchers last season during the World Series run. The presumed catcher of the future, William Contreras, struggled during d'Arnaud's absence. He's the man behind the plate for this team. The inclusion of Manny Pina obviously, makes this a little bit closer to maybe the platoon situation that we saw in years past. But Grant, what are you keying in on for d'Arnaud for this upcoming season?
I think the big thing is the opportunity to really be fully healed from that thumb injury. I'm not saying that he was playing absolutely hurt, but I don't think that he had gotten a chance to really get himself rehab back to the point that he would like to have been after having to undergo surgery in the middle of the season, then miss a big chunk of the season, then come back, and he just did not look always comfortable at the plate. He was getting beat, I think, by fastballs up in the zone in particular, which can happen regardless of a hand injury, but I don't think it helped. We saw he had his bat taped in a unique way, I think, to try to take pressure off of that when he had his hands together on the handle of the bat. That is something that I certainly noticed, and I'm sure a lot of people did. But offensively speaking, the 2020 season, certainly the high water mark for Travis d'Arnaud. Those were not the numbers that were expected when he came over as far as what he could do offensively. It was kind of a perfect storm season for him, and it was just really the small sample size theater was having daily showings of the Travis d'Arnaud show, and that was certainly a great thing. It's just not what you could expect going forward. He's a guy that's going to make a lot of contributions. I think behind the plate has some power, or at the plate rather, but behind the plate is where I think he makes the biggest contribution that he had. You brought up Manny Pina was brought in because I feel like the Braves learned a lesson last year of not wanting to be caught without a veteran plan B, just in the case that they need it. Not that they were completely unimpressed by William Contreras, but I think it just showed that there was still some growing to do for him. And, of course, Shea Langoliers made it to AAA Gwinnett by the end of the season. We haven't seen him yet. Those two guys could be the future, but there is some stability in place in the plan that the Braves now have behind the plate because you gave multiple years to d'Arnaud. You gave multiple years to Manny Pina as well. You just want to make sure that you're able to put a youthful catcher and a veteran catcher together, I think, to make the recipe for what you want to have behind the plate. And if the injury does happen to rear its ugly head, at least you've planned for that possibility rather than not having somebody in-house that could step in. You don't want half a dozen guys trading in and out of that spot when your starting or everyday catcher is gone.
So Steamer's projecting a 1.8 Fangraph WAR with 19 home runs, a 734 OPS from d'Arnaud this upcoming season. Obviously, again, it's not 2020 when he had that ridiculous 919 OPS and hit 44% above league average. I think it's fair to say, he was among the guys, and you mentioned this, that really took advantage of everything that came with that shortened season. But, he really backed up 2020 with a strong postseason. The reality of d'Arnaud in between the highs, I think, of what you saw in 2020 and what we saw out of him in 2021, he's a career year, 719 OPS player. In the season before he came to Atlanta, the steamer projections, would seem to be, I think, right on line with what I think you can look for production-wise from him in 2022.
Yeah, even if you look at the low batting average, low on base numbers, or the triple slash line, whatever you want to call it, and however you want to look at his overall lines, if you do happen to say, all right, well, Travis d'Arnaud only played about 60 games last year, you double it, that's 14 homers and 28 doubles that he was on pace for. On base wise, yeah, there's some room to grow there, but extra base wise, that's more or less what I would expect from him. 250 to 270, I'd be fine with that. And if he's playing every day or on a regular basis anyway, with Manny Pina mixed in there, I think you've got the recipe for what you want behind the plate. But again, it's setting yourself up for the possibility of injury that you really needed to do after they learned that lesson with d'Arnaud last year. And I thought that Sal Fasano had a really fascinating quote. He did an interview during the World Series with the New York Times, who were following d'Arnaud a little more closely because of his time with the Mets. And he just happened to say that it was a grind to find guys to fill in while he was out and while they were doing that search. And when they got him back, it was like having your whoopee back or having your blanket back for security, if you will, as a kid, and much like the pitching staff, being able to have this guy back behind the plate. So the number one thing I'm looking for out of Travis d'Arnaud is health. I think if that's in place, he's going to be able to make his contributions at the plate and a lot of contributions behind the plate. And we got a little glimpse of what he can do in the World Series and in the postseason. He caught every inning for this club. He delivered a big home run and was behind the plate for the near no-hitter in Game 3 of the World Series and hit 292 with a couple of bombs in the World Series. So he certainly ended it on a high note with both his performance and, of course, hoisting the trophy by the time it was all said and done. This is a key player for the Braves. He may not get all the headlines. He may not be on all the banners that are up around town, advertising for the club when they do come back to defend this 2022 or this 2021 World Series championship here in 2022. But he is a guy that is key to their success, and the Braves need him healthy and behind there as many times as they can get him.
So it's sometimes hard to quantify what you were just talking about there in terms of what a veteran catcher can mean, to a pitching staff. And obviously we saw when William Contreras was back there, the deficiencies that you can have with a guy who doesn't necessarily have that comfort level, one with calling a game, but working with the staff. But there is another aspect, of what d'Arnaud does behind the plate that is easily, quantifiable. And I think it kind of reared its head, during the postseason last year, and that's controlling the traffic on the base pass. Base runners were a perfect 18 for 18 on stolen bases against him. You look at his 2 years in Atlanta, base runners have gone 50 of 58 in base running opportunities against him. He's been above league average just once since 2016 when it comes to throwing runners out. We've talked here about Manny Pina. You look at that 2-year, $8 million deal that he got from the Braves. Pina has never been below league average in 8 seasons when it comes to throwing runners out. He was at 30% to d'Arnaud's 16% in 2021. How do you see this partnership kind of playing out? Because, we've seen so many times the Braves having success with this. We know that William Contreras isn't ready. Shea Langoliers obviously, still needs seasoning as well. How do you kind of see this playing out with d'Arnaud and Pina?
I think it'll be a little more similar, although on a bigger scale, to what we saw with Tyler Flowers and Travis d'Arnaud in 2020, and also what we saw with Tyler Flowers basically alongside Brian McCann or AJ Pierzynski over those years of Kurt Suzuki, as the Braves were more or less leaning on one guy kind of in a 60-40 way. But I think d'Arnaud could steal a little bit more playing time. But having Pina around is someone who defensively can mitigate maybe the late inning base stealing that could go on. You don't have to be afraid now to pinch run for Travis d'Arnaud if you need to, because you do have a capable defensive catcher that can come in, shut down the running game, handle the staff properly, and also might wander into a home run or two himself. So Pena, to me, is the best case scenario backup that you can find. It's something I think every club would like to find, and he got a multiple year deal from the Braves to be their backup, and again, to provide that stability Atlanta's looking for. But they're going to look for d'Arnaud, I think, to be the workhorse. But with stolen bases in the game, it's a lot more situational now. We're not talking about the Cardinals of the 1980s. There aren't guys out there stealing 50, 60, 70 bases every year anymore. In fact, if you have a few guys finish over 40, I think that's a banner year these days. So as much as I would like to tell you that, yeah, it'd be better to get a catcher with maybe a bigger cannon back there, and perhaps Shea Langoliers will be that guy, I don't worry as much about it. Though in the postseason, it makes you worry because every 90 feet is extremely important. But, hey, the Braves won it all with that going on, as you laid out, with perfect base stealing being done against him. So I don't guess you can come into the season and say this is going to be the thing that keeps them from winning. If they've done it before, maybe they can do it again.
Well, going to be interesting to see how this plays out with two catchers. From 2017 to 2020, Atlanta was second in catcher WAR using those tandems. And you mentioned the guys that they had so much success there, a blueprint that they obviously use, but health going to be the biggest factor in being able to pull that out. And we'll see if Travis d'Arnaud can put together that full, complete, and successful season in Atlanta. We're far from finished here on our Stock Watch series, but before we go any further, make sure you go back and check out the archives on the Talking Chop YouTube channel. While you're there, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notifications so you get an alert every time that we drop a new episode. I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time, Braves Country.